One of my favorite things about Google Sheets is you can do so much with it. And if it's not something you can do with a formula or a function, you can use AppScript to create pretty much anything you want to do. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to do a couple of automations to move rows from one tab to another tab automatically. And don't worry, there's no coding experience required to do this. All you have to do is follow instructions. So for example, I have a task tracker that I use at work, and one of the features is that I can mark a task as done, and it will move from this list and be added automatically to the bottom of the Done tab. And another automation we're going to do is we're going to be able to mark a task as completed by checking it, and it will move to the bottom of the completed tab. But since we don't need all of the different columns, we're only going to select specific columns, and then we're going to add a timestamp showing what day it's complete, and delete the original row. So I'm going to show you how to do both of these using pre-built code that's coming from my website, and then I'm going to show you how to customize it to meet your needs. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to set up the automation based off of a trigger. So all you have to do is select a specific trigger value, and then it will move from there. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to sheetsbyolin.com, and you'll see my website. And at the top, you'll see automation codes. Let's go ahead and click on that, and that will bring up my GitHub. And this has all the different codes for my different tutorials, different things like that, as well as all my different automation ideas video. So the two for this video that we're going to use is the move rows when checked and the move row with trigger. For part one, we're going to use move row with trigger. So I will click on that. And then all we need to do is click copy raw file. So once we do that, we can go back to a task tracker. And I'm going to set it up here, then I'm going to show you how to customize some things. So all we have to do is go to extensions, AppScript. And when you do that, you'll see something that looks like this. We're going to go ahead and delete everything that's there and paste what we just copied. We can rename this as move row, for example. And then you can rename whatever you want to up here. Perfect, so we're gonna go ahead and save this. If it's your first time saving it, it will prompt you to authorize the code. And the reason why it needs to authorize the code is because it's technically making edits on your behalf. And it hasn't gone through the official vetting process of Google to become a formal application and things like that. Essentially, it just means that it's user generated. So once you authorize the code, you'll be able to run it. And you'll see that this has an error message. Don't worry, the reason why it has an error message is because we have it set to on edit. And what that means is it's going to run every time a cell is edited. So since there was no cell edited at that time, it doesn't know what cell to run through the process, and that's why we're getting this error message. But in cell C3, whenever I mark a task as done now, it will run cell C3 through that process, and it will be moved to the bottom of the Done tab because it met the criteria needed. If I were to change the priority, it's also going to run that cell through the process, but since it doesn't meet the criteria for the application to work, it's not going to work. And it's really as simple as that, as long as everything is lined up. So let me explain how this works so that way you know how to customize it. So once again, it's based off of edit, so whatever cell you're editing at that time, then it's going to run that cell through here. This right here is just saying that we're looking at the cell that's on the active sheet. An active sheet just means the sheet that you're actively updating. And then it's going to look to see if that cell is in column 3. Now, normally when it comes to spreadsheets, we think of columns as letters and rows as numbers. But when it comes to AppScript, we need to have the column number instead. So A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. Since we're making the edits in column C, that's why it's column 3, because that's the third letter of the alphabet. And then it's going to search that for done. And done has to be in quotes, and it has to be capitalized, no spaces, things like that. So if in column 3, the value is exactly done, then it's going to move from the current sheet, the active sheet, to the target sheet. And this is the name of the target sheet. You can see right here, we have done as the name. And it's going to find the last row that has values, add it to one row below that, so the next empty row, and then delete the original row. And that's how it works. So to customize it, let's say instead of the tab being called done, it's called completed. If I were to save that, now we can go back here, and if I try to run it, it's not going to work. And the reason why it's not going to work is because there's no target sheet. So for done, if I rename this as completed, now I can mark it as done again. And since that target sheet exists, now it's going to move to the bottom of that target sheet. Similarly, I can change the value. So instead of done, I can mark that as completed or whatever I want it to be. Let's go ahead and save that. And then now if I mark it as done, it's not going to work because the trigger value has changed. So if I were to update this to completed, now if I mark it as completed, it will move just like it normally does. So that's exactly how it's working. And the last thing is that it's looking at column 3. If I were to change the location, so for example, if I want to add a column to the left, now this is in column 4 instead of column 3. So it's not going to work because it's not right here. if I were to actually type completed right here, it would still work because technically that's the cell that it's wanting to go to. So instead, what we would need to do is change the 3 to a 4 because now it's in column D instead of in column C. And now since it's going to look at column 4, I can mark it as completed. It will move to the bottom of the completed tab. As you can see right here, everything is offset by 1 column, and that's because we added that column right here. So if this was real life, I would need to add a column right here as well. That way everything aligns properly. Okay, so what if we wanted to make it where there's multiple conditions that can happen? So for example, if I have done, it goes to the done tab. If I mark it as parked, it goes to the parked tab. Or if I mark it as ready from any tab that's on here, it will go to the bottom of the task list. Let me show you how to set this up. So all I have to do is go to one curly brace above, make sure that you are not including that last curly brace. We're going to copy it and make sure that you copy the little spaces before if. We're going to paste what we just had. And then now we're going to change this. So now instead of done being the trigger word, we're going to put parked. And for the target sheet, we want to have it go to the parked tasks tab. And make sure you don't have any extra spaces or the spelling isn't exactly correct. You have a lowercase versus uppercase, things like that. It needs to match this tab name exactly. So we'll go ahead and save that. And now when I mark a task as parked, it's going to go right here to the parked tab. Now, even though we're no longer on the task list, since we're looking at the active sheet, if I want to send this to the done tab from here, I can still do that. So I can still mark it as done and it will move to this completed tab right there. And as you can see, it's right there. But what if we didn't want that to happen? What if we wanted to be able to mark it as parked and then mark it as ready to bring it back to the task list? Let's go ahead and make another one. So I'm going to copy that, go back to the very beginning, paste it. Once again, make sure you do not include this last one. Otherwise, this is going to be out of range from this move done function. And then instead of parked, we're going to put ready. And then instead of parked tasks, we're going to say task list. And once again, make sure there's not any extra spaces, different punctuation, anything like that. We'll save it. And now if I were to mark this task as ready, it's going to move back to the bottom of the task list, as you can see right there. But that's really it. So you can mark a task as done and it will move to the completed tab. You can mark a task as parked and it will move to the parked tab. And then whenever you're ready to complete it again, you can mark it as ready. Or if you wanted to, you can mark it as done straight from that parked tab. So you can kind of play around with the different trigger words. You can play around with the different columns. You can play around with the tab names. And you can really customize this code to make it your own. Now, similarly to the last one, instead of using a trigger that's like a drop down or a word or something like that, here we're going to check the box that is completed, and it's going to move specific columns from the to-do list to the completed tab, and it's going to add a timestamp to show exactly when it was completed. So for example, I'm filming this on November 9th, 2025 at 4:13 p.m. Now, as I mentioned, it's only going to copy specific columns. That's because we don't need to know how many days there are, that it's true, things like that. So if I were to expand right here, these are all the columns that we have on our list. So we have the owner, the area details, which I use as kind of like a unique identifier, the date it was last added, the days pending, and completed. So I don't need to see any of these 3 columns. I only care about these items. So we're going to only focus on bringing those items over and put a timestamp there. And if you're curious to what this is this is part of my automated chore tracker. So whenever a chore needs to be completed again, it will automatically be added to the bottom of my chore tracker while I sleep. And then from my phone or from my computer, whenever I mark it as complete, it will move from this list and it will automatically calculate when that chore needs to be completed again. And then it will go back to my task list and it will follow that cycle. So that way I only have items that actively need to be completed, cluttering up my to-do list. All right, so just like last time, we're going to go to sheetsbyolin.com, go to automation codes, and this time we want to have move row when checked. So automation ideas - move row when checked. And it's also plus timestamp, you just can't see that very well. We're going to copy the raw file, go to our spreadsheet, go to extensions app script, and we're going to delete what's currently there and paste it. Now let's go ahead and rename this as move when checked, or you can put whatever you want. Up here, you can also put whatever you want. Now let's save it and let's run it. And you might need to authorize this code as well. Once again, that just means that it's been user generated. It's making edits on your behalf on that spreadsheet. And it's not formally gone through the Google vetting process. All right, so this one's kind of similar when it comes to it being on edit. That's why when you run it, you get this error message because it doesn't actually know what cell it's trying to look up. But it's a little bit different and it's not an active sheet. So this first one right here is going to be the sheet that it's coming from. So in this case, the tab name is to-do list. And if I go back to my spreadsheet, to-do list is the tab name. This is the tab that it's copying to. So it's going from to-do list to completed. So from to-do list to completed. And then down here, it's just saying that it's looking up the column and the row. And then it's looking up to see if that cell is on the to-do list tab, which matches the source right here. And if it's in column 7. And column 7 is column G. Just like last time, you just need to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and that will give you the number that contains the checklist. And then we want to make it where if that cell is marked as true, if you didn't know, anything that has a check that's actually checked is true on the back end, and if it's not checked, it's false on the back end. So that's why whenever we check it, it's adding true. We're just not typing it out, we're simply checking it instead. And then here we have the columns that we want to pull over from the original list. So you can see right here that the row is going to be whatever row is being edited. We're starting in column 1, and we're going to copy over columns 1 through 4. So if I go over here, starting in column 1, it'll be columns 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's why on the completed tab, we only have those 4 columns that are being completed. Down here, it's saying where to copy those values. So once again, starting in column 1, columns 1 through 4 on the completed tab. And then we're going to add a timestamp in row 5 of that completed tab and delete the row from the original tab. So if we were wanting to change this, let's say instead of having to-do list, we want this to be called list. And instead of completed, we want this to be historical, for example. We can go back to our code, change to-do list to list, and make sure there's no spaces or punctuation differences, things like that. We're going to change completed to historical. And then down here as well, don't forget this is also important. We need to change this to match the new name of the source tab. So let's go ahead and save that. And it should work just like normal. So I'm going to go ahead and mark this as completed. It will move, go back to the bottom of our historical tab. So everything's working exactly as planned. Now, if you wanted to change the location of this, so instead of column 7, so now this is in column 8, all you have to do is change this from column 7 to column 8. And now when I save that, mark this as completed, it will move just like normal. And as you can see, everything looks the same right here, and that's because the code for this spreadsheet isn't changing because we're still copying only the first 4 and then adding the timestamp to the 5th. But let's say we wanted to actually include the date added. So instead of looking at the first 4 rows, we have the first 5 rows. Let's go ahead and change this to 5. So we're copying the first 5 rows. We're putting the first 5 rows into the completed tab. And then we're changing the timestamp from column 5 to column 6. Let's go ahead and save that. Now, since we're adding another tab, I need to go ahead and insert a column to the left of day completed and say day added. Perfect. So now once I mark the task as completed, it will move the first 5 columns from this sheet to the historical sheet. So now we have that 10/20, which was the date added that was listed in column 5. And then for our timestamp, instead of that being in column 5 as usual, now it's aligned with the date completed tab in column 6. And that's really it. So for a quick summary for both of the codes, for the move when check code, go ahead and put the tab name right here, where it's going to go right here. Make sure that the names match exactly. There's no rogue spaces, things like that. The tab name of where it's coming from right here, where that checkbox is going to be located, which column number it is. This will never change. Which rows you want to copy, so if it's rows 1 through 5, 1 through 10, whatever, this should match this. So that way you're copying the same number of rows and delivering the same number of rows to the next sheet. And then where the timestamp is, right here. If you don't want the timestamp, you can simply delete that portion. And now let's go ahead and save that, test it out. So if we were to mark this as completed, go to our historical tab, and now we don't have that timestamp right there. So simple as that. And that's all you need to do for the move when check tab. To move based off of a trigger, let's go ahead and delete these just to make it normal to what you actually need. It will go based off of the active sheet where the cell is being updated. This right here is the column where that trigger is going to be present. The value right here is the name of the tab that you want to move the row to. And that's all you have to do. So whenever you mark a task as done, it will move from this list to the bottom of the completed tab. And that's everything. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe. Check out my playlist with other automation ideas, and like and comment for more.